Su Zhe, historical graduate student who was studying in the countryside, traveled to the Minnan Garrison in the Jiajing year of the Ming Dynasty. Emperor Jiajing was addicted to cultivating immortals and underwent major renovations in the palace and temple. In the court, treacherous officials lead the way and offer green words to flatter the emperor. Japanese pirates invade the southeast, while Liaodong is restless. The rise of mind studies and popular emotions brought a new trend of cultural liberation, and also created the most prosperous market culture before the sunset of the Ming Dynasty. Su Zhe, who has awakened the system, possesses life skills in this southeast guard. Can he take daming on different tracks? Also known as, My Wife is the One Piece King, and I am using daming liver skill to create a sea where the sun never sets. There are already tens of thousands of orders for this high-quality old book with a total of 2 million words. Please rest assured to subscribe. Keywords of the novel. I am in daming liver life skills without a pop-up window. I am downloading the complete set of Daming Liver Life Skills TXT and reading the latest chapter of Daming Liver Life Skills. Chapter 1. Crossing. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 1. Crossing. Su Zhe was awakened by the sound of waves hitting the cliff. In a daze, when he opened his eyes, he saw the old wooden bed and gauze covered in dust. Half bright and half ignorant, Su Zhe felt a sense of confusion, as if he had woken up and traveled through 100 years. As his understanding of time and space gradually recovered, Su Zhe sat up and saw the old-fashioned TV in the room, pulling his hazy consciousness back to the real world. The only hotel in Changningwei village has a strong sense of history. Every day when I wake up, I feel the feeling of traveling through time. As expected, the mentor's words are correct. Read less online novels. However, Su Zhe has always disagreed with the mentor's other statement, play less games. He took out his phone, clicked on the familiar app, and glanced at his overnight experience of hanging up. Congratulations to player Su Zhe, your skill, medical technique, has been upgraded to LV5. Su Zhe quickly moved the character from medical house to school and continued to level the skill, reading. In the 100 scenes, a small factory placed a hanging phone, and Su Zhe, who worked hard and studied, naturally had no money to pay for it. Without money, he could only use liver as a substitute. Closing the game, Su Zhe can't be said to be too addicted to it, just trying to relieve academic pressure. After finishing his grooming, Su Zhe walked out of the dilapidated inn, which was built on a high slope and happened to overlook the entire Changningwei village. In the early morning, only a few houses were still smoking, indicating that this ancient village had gradually lost its popularity. Su Zhe, a graduate student in the history department of a key university, came to Changning Weitsuan with the aim of completing his master's thesis. In August, the coastal area of Minnan is still very hot, and the sea is so stingy that it cannot bear to give a hint of cool breeze to the land. Before 8 o'clock, the scorching sun is already making people unable to open their eyes. Su Zhe put on a cold hat and walked towards the central ancestral hall of Changningwei village, carrying a data bag, following the local customs. Under the wide-brimmed bamboo hat, there is also a transparent layer of gauze. This layer of gauze not only does not affect the visibility, but also blocks the ultraviolet rays that directly hit the face and neck. Su Zhe cannot help but admire the wisdom of his ancestors. Passing by several abandoned houses, Su Zhe couldn't help but sigh. Su Zhe found from the local chronicles that Changning Guard was established in the 13th year of the Ming Hongwu era. This was a guard post in southern Fujian and a guardian of the vast sea territory of the Ming Empire. And the people of Changningwei village, who are descendants of the military households of the Weisua, lived in this Weisua for over 600 years before the wave of economic development swept across the country. Many houses still retain their original style when they were first built, and they have been standing guard at this seaside outpost for 600 years, but modernization ultimately defeated this coastal watchtower. Under the tide of the times, young people left their villages one after another to work in big cities, and then the next generation also left. The kindergartens and primary schools in Changningwai village were gradually abolished and merged with the schools in the county. Today, the village that used to accommodate thousands of people has only a few dozen elderly people left. A few years ago, we vigorously developed the tourism industry. Someone once planned to transform this village into an ancient town tourist attraction, and this remote coastal village was also connected to the highway a few years ago. Susie walked on the newly built cement road, carefully avoiding the grains on the road. But there are no more young people in the village, and this road has become a drying ground for rice. However, the tide of development in the times has gradually come to a halt, and the plan for scenic spot renovation has also been shelved. Fortunately, the ancient village can still be preserved well, which gave Suze the opportunity to complete his master's thesis. After walking for more than 10 minutes, Suze's forehead was already sweating. The ancestral hall in the center of the village was the most magnificent building in the entire Changningwai village, with colorful glazed beasts burned on the eaves. This Ming Dynasty style building is well preserved, and if you are a student majoring in ancient architecture, you will definitely treasure it. However, in the eyes of Suze, a history major, he values the genealogy of Changningwai village, which records a history of 600 years, more than the magnificent ancestral halls. Uncle 7. Suze shouted loudly, and an old man wearing a white sweatshirt walked out of the temple trembling and muttering. Calling out my soul. I'm not dead. Susie chuckled and quickly stepped forward to support Uncle 7, handing the wine he brought from the town yesterday to the old man. Good wine. Chishu Gong and Suze have no blood relationship. Uncle Chi read some books when he was young, but later when he was working, he didn't know why he broke his leg and couldn't do physical work, so he returned to the village. The villagers saw him pitiful and asked him to guard the temple. Decades have passed in a blink of an eye, and he has transformed from Aki to Chishu, and now he has become Chishu Gong. Uncle Chi was greedy for wine, and regardless of whether it was still morning, he poured in the wine and took a sip. The wine bug aroused his sexual desire. He put down his glass and said, "Come on, today we will tell the story of the 7th patriarch." Susie quickly took out his notebook and opened the recording pen. He brings food and drink to the old man guarding the temple every day, so that he can learn about the historical information of this Ming Dynasty guard from the mouth of this temple keeper. At a time when academic pioneers throughout history had already pushed the Ming Dynasty beyond measure, Suze resolutely stepped into the pit of fire in the study of Ming history. The emperors, famous officials, systems, and military affairs of the Ming Dynasty have all been thoroughly studied. Helpless, he can only find this ancient village and start with their genealogy to study the historical changes of this Ming Dynasty guard house. Suzy has accumulated some materials, and what he covets most is the genealogy in the ancestral hall, as well as the stories of his ancestors in the mind of Chishu Gong. Uncle Chi said with a rhythmic tone, "If we talk about this 7th patriarch, that's a remarkable figure. That's the Mulan of the Ming Dynasty. Wait, are these 7 ancestors women? Yeah, why are you still discriminating against gender, kid? That's not right. Suze has a headache. This 7th uncle has a lively mind. Nowadays, with the development of the internet, he uses various online languages more smoothly than Suze. The ancestors of Changning Guard inherited the military position of the guard. The 7th ancestor is a woman, how can he inherit the military position? Why is it difficult for Mulan, who can join the army, to inherit the military position as the 7th ancestor? At that time, your 7th patriarch should have been in the Jiajing period. It was not a chaotic era, and the laws and regulations were sound. How could women join the army? The 6th patriarch passed away early, and the 7th patriarch's younger brother was too young to inherit the military position. The 7th patriarch could only take on the family's responsibilities, as it is written in the genealogy. Do you listen, kid? Suze quickly closed his mouth, and Uncle 7 continued. The most legendary story of Emperor Kishizu dates back to the 33rd year of the Jiajing reign, when he had just taken over his military duties. At that time, it was Wang Ji, the pirate king of the Ming Dynasty, who was still crossing the seven seas, and the Ming army had suffered several defeats. But our Changning Guard in southern Fujian has protected the safety of coastal people. But this sea is really too dangerous. Once, the seventh patriarch led a ship from the Imperial Guard to patrol the sea and encountered an unprecedented superstorm. I only saw the seventh patriarch calmly piercing the void in the storm. He stabbed the Dragon King, who was hiding in the thick fog and making waves. The storm immediately receded, and the seventh patriarch finally led the ship safely back to the garrison. Su Zhe stopped taking notes and said helplessly, "Uncle Chi, don't read too many online novels. Your story is too outrageous." Uncle Chi was dissatisfied and said, "What a story. This is a true story recorded in the genealogy. Even the day when the seventh patriarch safely returned home is recorded in the genealogy. I remember it was February 14th. Su Zhe sighed again and said, "Uncle Chi, have you ever encountered a storm in February in southern Fujian?" Uncle Chi suddenly fell silent. There are no typhoons in southern Fujian in February. As someone who has lived in Changningwei village for decades, he has never encountered a storm in February. Don't believe it, kid. I'll bring the genealogy over. Uncle Chi limped and pulled out a thick genealogy from the ancestral hall. He handed the genealogy to Su Zhe and flipped through the section of the seventh ancestor, saying, "Look at it yourself. Genealogy is not just a regular booklet that records the names of ancestors. A revised and improved genealogy will also record the deeds of ancestors, important events discussed by the clan, records of clan lawsuits, and information on clan land, property, and shops. These are first-hand historical materials for historical research. This genealogy of Changning Guard, well preserved and well documented, is a precious historical research material coveted by Su Zhe." Su Zhe flipped through the yellowed paper and it was indeed the same record as Uncle Seven. He quickly said, "Uncle Seven, I was wrong." Uncle Chi lost interest in talking and waved his hand, saying, "Take the family tree away, copy it and return it to me." Su Zhe was greatly surprised. Previously, he asked the old man for a copy of the family tree, but Uncle Chi still disagreed. He didn't expect to give it to him now with ease. Qishu Gong said somewhat regretfully, "Changningwei village is almost gone. What's the use of having this genealogy?" Su Zhe also followed suit. His research in history was like a dying light in Changningwei village. The golden age of galloping has passed, and now this era of black iron only has a golden afterglow. Su Zhe often thought that if he were born 10 years earlier, he could also secure a teaching position and do some historical research in poverty like a mentor. If I could have been born 30 years earlier, perhaps I would have become an authority in a certain field, receiving state subsidies to do the research I want to do. In this era of black iron, Su Zhe is facing the dilemma of graduating soon and losing his job, and he may soon have to go to the factory to fix screws. Hand over the genealogy to Su Zhe, and Uncle Seven stood up again, limping and taking out a snake-skin bag from behind the gatehouse. "You've been chatting with me for so many days, take these potatoes and sweet potatoes back." Su Zeben wanted to refuse, but seeing the warmth in the stubborn old man's eyes, he nodded and took the snake-skin bag. He solemnly put the genealogy into a document bag and bid farewell to Uncle Chi with a snake-skin bag. Uncle Chi just waved his hand and picked up the wine glass on the table again, drinking and drinking on his own. Su Zhe bid farewell to his seventh uncle and excitedly ran towards the station at the village entrance, dragging a snake-skin bag. There is no photocopy shop in the village, and he can't wait to take the family tree to the town for photocopying. Changningwei village is built along a cliff, and the bus station leading to the town requires crossing a small mountain. On the mountaintop, there are still beacon towers left over from the Ming Dynasty's Wei Suo era, but the brick and stone roads are already covered with moss. But the mouth of the beacon tower has weathered and corroded most of it, leaving only half a person-high ruins and broken walls. Suze ran too fast, not paying attention to the slippery bricks and stones under his feet, and accidentally fell towards the cliff. Stumbling, Suze flipped over the pier and fell straight off the cliff. He tightly held the information bag in his arms, and the snakeskin bag given by Uncle Seven also fell off the cliff with him. The body collided with the protruding ridge in the mountain, and Suze fell into a deeper abyss once again. After intense pain, a hazy feeling surged into Suze's heart. Gone. This time Immortal is really going through time. Meanwhile, the phone in Suze's pocket suddenly lit up, and the game icon of 100 scenes flickered for a moment before disappearing from the phone. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Family Temples. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Family Temples. When Suze opened his eyes, the sun was already hanging on the horizon and was about to sink into the sea. Suze struggled to stand up and hugged the document bag in his arms. Fortunately, the official document bag used for collecting style in the department is made of craft paper material, which is strong and waterproof, and has not been damaged due to falling off a cliff. Suze checked himself again. Although there were some abrasions on his body, his arms and legs could move, and there were no large bleeding wounds. It's just a miracle. Suze looked up at the cliff where he had stumbled and fallen, but suddenly froze. He remembered clearly that the beacon tower on the mountaintop had become a ruin, otherwise he wouldn't have fallen off the battlements. But at this moment, the beacon tower on the cliff was very intact, and Suze also saw the torches shining through the mouth of the stack. Suze rubbed his eyes hard, and under the sunset, the tightly woven blue bricks of the beacon tower did not look like they had been eroded for 600 years. Suze looked around again. When he first entered Changningwai village, Suze saw a piece of smelly and dirty mudflat under the cliff. Although urbanization has bypassed this remote village, the pollution of globalization has not been spared here. The stinking sea water has carried silt, turning the mudflat under the cliff into a barren area. The fishermen of Changningwai village have not caught fish in the coastal waters for a long time. But at this moment, Suze only smelled the natural sea smell, but there was no pungent odor as before. In the setting sun, a small crab climbed out of the clean mudflat and quickly crossed the back of Suze's hand. Suze sat up straight, and his mentor was right. He read less online novels. I'm afraid it's really time to travel now. Suze quickly touched himself. He saw the familiar shorts and white shirt. The recently bought cold hat was scattered around him. The snake skin bag presented by his seventh uncle was also lying on the nearby mudflat. Suze's heart was half cold, and he crossed over with his body. This was the worst way to cross, and there was no other way. The physical passage means that one does not have the identity of this world, so my father and grandfather, who are Zhu Yuanzhang, have no connection with Suze. Although the current era is not yet confirmed, Qishu Gong said that since his ancestors, the beacon tower of Changning Guard has not been maintained. But now the beacon tower on the cliff is still well preserved, while Changning Guard was established in the 13th year of Hongwu, which means it traveled to the Ming or Qing dynasties. Regardless of which dynasty, feudal dynasties were very strict with unidentified refugees, and Changning Guard was a military forbidden area in the Ming Dynasty. If an unidentified person broke in, they were likely to be caught as spies or pirates. As soon as Suze thought of this, he quickly stood up, and at that moment, electronic sounds echoed in his mind. Discovering the location, beach, allows you to learn the skill, chasing the sea. Do you want to learn it? System. Suze was ecstatic for a while. Isn't this his own junk mobile game, 100 scenes? Chasing the sea is one of the most practical skills for beginners in the 100 scenery map. They can obtain seafood by the seaside, but they need to discover the map, beach. The locations encountered by each character in the 100 scenes are randomly generated. In the early stages, Suze had to reopen several times in order to create a map with beaches. Learn. Suzy quickly chose to study, and then some simple knowledge of sailing flooded into his mind. Learn skill, chasing the sea, currently LV1, experience 0 out of 100, it is indeed a system. Suzy was in a good mood and quickly continued to study the system, but soon he found that apart from these prompts, all other functions of the system were gone. Wait, where is my daily lottery? Where is my hang-up button? How can I improve my skill level? Is that so? Suddenly, a small crab crawled over Suze's feet, and he immediately remembered the knowledge of chasing the sea in his mind. He blocked a nearby crab with one finger. Suzy quickly and ruthlessly picked up the thumb-sized crab, and soon the system beeped. Capturing the short-fingered monk crab, sea driving experience +1, 1/100, Suze's face showed a smile that was even worse than crying. The mentor was right, garbage mobile games waste youth. You should know that the game 100 Scenes is a game that explodes from liver to liver. Don't be fooled by the fact that leveling up currently only requires 100 points of experience, but after reaching level 5, the experience required for leveling up will explode in multiples. LV1 to LV2 requires 100 experience, LV2 to LV3 requires 200 experience, but LV5 to LV6 requires 1000 experience. And LV10 to LV11 require a total of 10,000 experience points. In the game, you can earn money or hang up. What should you do in reality? Are you really catching tens of thousands of crabs at sea? What came to Suze's mind again? He put down the small crab in his hand. This round-headed crab is a common species along the southeast coast, named after its resemblance to a bald monk. Small in size, it tastes meatless, and belongs to gray garbage items in the game, which are not accepted by shops. When Suze saw the crab landing on the beach, it was once again two dragons playing with pearls, and his fingers fiercely gripped the crab. The unlucky crab was too scared to move, and Suze checked the system again. The experience of rushing to the sea was still pitiful 1/100. That's great. I can't even brush my skills anymore. Suze desperately shut down the system, so let's get out of the current situation and wait for the future to study this broken system. He held on to the file bag, grabbed the snake skin bag not far away, and looked around. Over there. Susie's eyes lit up. There is a cracked cave on the mountain wall not far away. The cave is more than 1 meter high from the mudflat, and it is unknown whether it will be submerged when the tide rises. However, Suze didn't care about these things either. He stuffed the document bag into the snake skin bag, took off his belt to tie the bag, and then stuffed the snake skin bag into this crevice. Suze felt insecure again and touched the hole with the black mud on the mudflat. He made some marks nearby and remembered the location of the stone crack. When Suzy finished all this work, he began to look for a way to leave the mudflat. It's not that Suze doesn't want to stay here, but that the sea will rise at night, and this mudflat will be submerged by the sea. Swimming at sea at night is almost like dying. Suze doesn't want to cross again. Before the sunset disappeared, Suze finally found a path to leave the mudflat. Anyway, we should leave here first. Walking on the bumpy path, Suze's calves were cut by tough weeds, and he felt once again that his journey was truly a signing. It's okay if you don't have a soul piercing through the imperial family. Awakening is such a broken system. You should know that 100 Scenes is a farming and survival game, without martial arts and fairy arts skills, only various life skills. Although I don't know if the system will mutate during traversal, it seems that this broken system cannot help me cultivate immortality. As the sky gradually darkened, Suze struggled to walk on the path for more than 10 minutes. Just as he was gasping for breath from exhaustion, a wild barking of a dog made Suze's soul burst out. More barks of dogs were heard, and Suze was hesitating whether to retreat to the beach. Suddenly, a beam of light tore open in the darkness ahead. The red torch dispelled the thick darkness like ink, and the urgent sound of a gong fell on Suze's heart. Catching the Japanese pirates. Susie's legs were so scared that they went limp. Just as he was about to escape, something fell from above his head and trapped his head, hands, and feet. Immediately after, Suze felt a sharp pain in the back of his head, and he was about to faint as soon as his eyes turned black. Before fainting, he heard a childish voice say, "My move of throwing oneself into the net is amazing. Uncle San, wait for my sister, wait for my brother to come back, you must get 5 out of 1 and tell her clearly, don't treat me like a child anymore." Next, Suze vaguely saw a group of big men rushing forward, tying themselves tightly and carrying him towards the Changning guard. When Suze woke up again, he found himself tied to a pillar with his hands tied back. He felt a faint throbbing pain in the back of his brain, and he was truly the most unlucky traveler in history. "I got stuck on the stick when I came up, but when I woke up, I was tied up again. It seems like I will be crossing again soon." Suzy finally opened his eyes and saw his condition clearly. He was trapped on a red pillar, with a clay statue of a goddess beside him. Suze remembered that Uncle Chi had once said that there was a family temple in Changningwai village, which was a deity worshipped by the ancestors of Changningwai for generations. However, in the process of modernization, this temple was demolished. Discovering the location of the family temple can help you learn skills such as religious knowledge, prayer, and fortune-telling. Have you learned? Learn and learn. Suzy now has no time to attend to this system. After hearing the prompt sound of "skill has been learned," he heard a hoarse female voice. "Wake up." Suzy turned his head and saw a skinny old lady sitting by the temple gate, with several young people with yellow faces and thin muscles standing beside her. "Aunt Jo, why don't you chop off the head of this Japanese pirate? Last time, Lord Shinhu said that killing Japanese pirates comes with a reward for silver. Aunt Jo, this guy should be punished. Ask where the other Japanese pirates are hiding. Wait until Baihu comes back to bring this thief's den. That's a great achievement. Gio Auntie, I heard that the blood of these Japanese pirates can cure tuberculosis. My sick woman." Suze studied Minnan language for a long time to complete his graduation thesis. Minnan language is an ancient language that has not changed much in the past 1,000 years. Suze quickly understood everyone's words, and he was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. He quickly shouted, "I'm not a Japanese pirate." Everyone stopped discussing, and Aunt Jo, who was sitting in a chair, raised her cloudy eyes and looked at Suze, asking. "It's not a Japanese pirate, why do we need to kun the head?" Suzy opened his mouth, but he was powerless to defend himself. In ancient times, people valued their physical appearance and skin, and their parents did not usually know how to cut their hair. And his short hair has become an ironclad proof of the Japanese pirates. "Aunt Jo, is this Japanese pirate speaking well? He must be preparing to infiltrate the county town." Yes, it must be a big Japanese pirate gang. Soon, a Japanese pirate proficient in Chinese infiltrated Linxian and robbed several coastal villages. It's already February 14th today, why haven't the 100 households returned? Did they be ambushed by these Japanese pirates? How about killing this guy to sacrifice to the sea? We must bless all the households' safe return. Upon hearing these guys shouting and killing each other, each with a very superstitious appearance, Suze quickly realized and shouted, "Don't kill me. I am a child under the Mazu throne. If you kill me, Mazu will be punished." With Suze's loud voice, everyone fell silent, only to see this ninth aunt's murky eyes staring at Suze. Suze felt a little proud of his urgency and went to hear Aunt Jo say. "What is enshrined in the temple is the third Master Empress Dowager. Do you think you are a child under the Mazu throne?" Suziru was struck by lightning, and he looked up at the clay sculpture in the center of the family temple. It was only then that he realized it was a statue of three goddesses, holding golden scissors in one hand and a golden square bucket in the other. LV1's religious knowledge flooded into his mind. Damn it, he reported the wrong door. During the new book period, there will be 2 shifts a day, which is still the old time, at 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. Thank you all for your support. Fanio will definitely work hard to code the characters. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Divination. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Divination. San Shi Tai Nyang Nyang, also known as San Shao Nyang Nyang, is the 3 women from Jinao Island in Fengshan. Madame San Shi is also a sea god worshipped in the Minnan region. Su Zhe now deeply regrets not using her skills even though she has them. The feeling of not using her skills when she dies is really terrible. Seeing the increasingly fierce gaze of Aunt Jiao, Su Zhe really wanted to ask. Is it still possible to say that she is a child under the seat of the 3 Knights Empress? With Su Zhe's current LV1 level of religious knowledge, Su Zhe realized that there were still some bad customs of worshipping the sea in the southern Fujian region, and he broke out in a cold sweat once again. It's done, I'll soon become ashamed for being a time traveler. Should we start over again? Susie's brain is running rapidly. Uncle Chi, you must bless me. Wait, Uncle Chi's ancestors are here, probably none of Uncle Chi's grandparents were born, right? Su Zhe suddenly had a flash of inspiration and thought of the story told by Uncle Seven before his time traveling. On February 14, returning home, Su Zhe quickly looked at Aunt Jiao and said, "What year it is now?" Aunt Jiao's murky eyes turned around and she said, "This year is the year of Jiajing." Su Zhe quickly calculated in his mind that the Jiajing year is a chronological method based on the stem and branch method, using 1 character for each of the heavenly stem and earthly branch to record the year, with a cycle of 60 years. This kind of chronological system cannot immediately determine the specific year. Judging from the attire of Aunt Jiao, it should be the Ming Dynasty. Su Zefei quickly calculated that the 33rd year of Jiajing is not the Jiajing year. Is it really the day that Uncle Chi said? Su Zhe looked at the sunny outside and blurted out. "I am a child under the Mazu throne, I can prove it." Aunt Jiao looked at Su Zhe, and the few yellow-skinned men beside her were also intimidated by Su Zhe's aura. Su Zhe shouted, "There will be a storm today. Heavy rainstorm." When Su Zhe finished speaking, the few men all laughed. Aunt Jiao smiled and said, "Today is February 14th, and there won't be any storms here in February." Suzy also understood this, but at this moment, in order to survive, he could only grit his head and say, "I am a child under the Mazu throne. I know the wind and rain. There will be a storm today." Seeing the skeptical eyes of the crowd, Su Zhe continued, "If there is no rain, let the knives and tribulations be. What kind of storm can there be today? You Japanese pirate, don't use demonic language to deceive others. Not only the Japanese pirates, but also the demons. 9 aunties, take him to sacrifice to the sea." Aunt Jiao raised her head. She had great authority in the guards, and everyone stopped shouting and killing. I only heard Aunt Jiao say, "Then wait a day. If there is no wind and rain, then hand over this demon to the county government." Upon hearing what Aunt Jiao said, Su Zhe was able to temporarily escape danger. But looking at the cloudless sky outside the window, "Is your genealogy reliable, Uncle Seven? If it's not reliable, my little life will be gone. But now we can only obey fate." Su Zhe is still tied to the pillars of the family temple, and those yellow-skinned men are gradually dispersing, leaving only 2 guards to guard Su Zhe. Jiao Auntie, the temple goddess of this family temple, held a brush and swept away the incense ash from the tables and tables in the temple. Then, she sat on a cattail and began morning classes. The ancient sounds of Minnan were mixed with religious terms, and Su Zhe didn't know what the old lady was talking about. He closed his eyes and thought about how to escape if the prediction of a storm failed. He heard a childish voice coming from outside the temple door. 9 aunties. Following the sound, an 8 or 9-year-old boy stepped into the temple. He was wearing a coarse cloth garment, with a tan skin and a tiger-like appearance. He looked much more nutritious than the strong men guarding Suze. Suze only then remembered that this was the childlike voice he heard before he fell into a coma. Was it this little radish head that caught him? This little carrot head seemed to hold a considerable position in Changning Wei. Aunt Jiao stood up and gave him a seat, and little radish head was not polite at all. He sat down and began to look up and down at Suze. This is the Japanese pirates I caught last night, isn't it? Aunt Jiao, my move of falling into the trap yesterday was really impressive. Aunt Jiao said with a headache, it's not that effective to fall into a trap. I threw a net at this Japanese pirate, and he crawled in on his own. It's not like he threw himself into the net, what is it? This Aunt Jiao was speechless for a moment and seemed unable to refute this kid. Little Radish stood in front of Suze with his head crossed over his waist, looking at Suze arrogantly and saying, I heard that you, a Japanese pirate, have been caught by Ben Baihu and are still not honest. Suzy looked at this little bean pudding and couldn't help but laugh as he pretended to be old and mature. Unexpectedly, the little radish frowned and pretended to be wicked, saying fiercely, You Japanese pirate. When my sister, I won't let my brother come back, you'll be dead. Little Radish Head thought of something else and walked up to Aunt Nine, saying, Aunt Jiao, quickly calculate a divination for my brother. When can he come back? Aunt Jiao lovingly touched Little Radish's head, picked up 2 half-moon-shaped wooden boards from the desk, and handed them to Little Radish's head, saying, Throw a divination cup in front of the Empress, be sincere in your heart. Suzy looked over and quickly activated the cheat's divination skill. 100 Scenes is a farming game with a real background, without any martial arts fantasy elements. His divination skills are just a life skill that includes observing words and expressions as well as divination rituals. In the game, his main function is to calm people's hearts and set up stalls to make money. The newly learned skill is only LV1 level, and Suze's mind only comes up with some information about the divination tools in Little Radish Head's hand. This thing is called a divination cup, which is a divination tool used in the southern Fujian region. The method of divination is also simple. This crescent-shaped divination cup divides yin and yang, with 1 yin and 1 yang being the Holy Grail, 2 yin being yin, and 2 yang being yang. Throwing 3 times yields a hexagram with 6 refutations, only seeing the little carrot head thrown 3 times yields yin, Holy Grail, yang. Aunt Jiao frowned and was about to read the hexagram book to decipher it when she heard Suze, who was tied to the pillar, say, Zili follows the hexagram to transform into Shuele Tun hexagram. Riding the wind and breaking the waves sometimes, hang your cloud sail straight to the vast sea. The person who seeks divination will encounter some ups and downs, but they will definitely be able to return safely. Little Radish looked at Aunt Jiao. Aunt Jiao opened the hexagram book and it was indeed consistent with the hexagram mentioned by Suze. The content of the interpretation also corresponded to the poem mentioned by Suze. Aunt Jiao nodded at Little Radish and agreed with Suze's divination. He immediately asked Suze excitedly, When can my brother come back? Suzy was even more certain that he was seeking divination for the 7th generation ancestor in the genealogy, and immediately said, Just today. Today. When I came to the temple, Little Radish Head looked at the sea. Today is a calm and sunny day, where did the wind and waves come from? Just as everyone was puzzled, the bright sunshine suddenly dimmed, and the sun seemed to be blocked by something. And outside the papery windows of the family temple, there was a strong wind, and the window paper seemed unable to withstand the ravages of the wind, leaking a few cold winds into the family temple. Jiao Auntie shuddered and heard the shouting of a woman outside the temple. It's raining. It's raining. I'm collecting my clothes. Almost at the moment when the strong wind blows, Do Yu falls low on the tiles of the house temple, and the rainwater converges into water columns falling from the eaves. Aunt Jiu quickly walked out of the temple and looked at the dark clouds on the sea in the distance. She exclaimed in surprise. Is the storm really here? Susie almost collapsed to the ground. A storm came, and the records on the family tree were correct. He can be considered to have escaped a disaster. The new book has been signed, everyone can rest assured. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Dragon King. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Dragon King. Beijing, Shiyuan, Yushi Palace. Emperor Jiajing, who had been in power for 33 years, dismissed the civil officials who supported him through a grand ceremony when he ascended to the throne, demonstrating his extraordinary talent in power and magic. In today's Jiajing, the ability to manipulate people's hearts and manipulate the court situation is even more extreme. At this moment, the Emperor Daojun of the Ming Dynasty was sitting upright on a delicate cattail. The Yushi Palace is a Taoist-style palace, with 4 golden silk and Nanmu pillars that can only be embraced by 2 people, supporting a towering dome. The futon that Emperor Jiajing sat on was facing the center of the dome. The area around this futon is inlaid with gold on the floor tiles, forming the image of gossip. At this moment, the loyal and filial emperors, carrying the 2 capitals and 13 provinces of the Ming Dynasty, were reciting the Taoist scriptures with their eyes closed. He held a copper pestle in his hand and gently tapped the copper hole in front of the futon, emitting a sound of gold and stone. The eunuch Lv Fong, who was in charge of the imperial household department, was called the Minister of Internal Affairs in the outer court, and the eunuch in the inner court was revered as the Patriarch. However, at this time, he respectfully knelt by the side of the futon and recited the petitions of his courtiers to Emperor Jiajing. Lv Fong's voice was rhythmic and his words were clear. The most appreciated ability of this imperial prime minister by Jiajing was his ability to extract key content from the vague memorials of his courtiers. At this moment, Lv Fong was reading a memorial from the Minister of War, Nye Bao. Instead of following the memorial, Lv Fong picked out the most crucial part of the memorial and told it to the emperor. Your Highness, Nye Shangshu reported that the reason why the world's military is now prepared to guard against corruption is fundamentally due to the generals' lack of dedication to the court and their unwillingness to serve the court. Jiajing stopped reciting the Taoist scriptures and lightly tapped on the bronze tablet. Lv Fong, who was best at guessing Jiajing's intentions, immediately continued. The reason why the proofreading is not attentive to the court is because they have resentment towards the court. Jiajing lightly tapped the copper cup again, and Lv Fong knew that this memorial had aroused Jiajing's interest. He quickly said. Nye Shangshu read the survey of the Ministry of War and found that many of the officers in the Imperial Guard are descendants of criminals who were conscripted for crimes. These people's ancestors were originally criminals of the Ming Dynasty, and they have been imprisoned in the military for generations due to their crimes. Now that their descendants have become officers due to chance and merit, how much loyalty can they have to the court? The laws and regulations of this dynasty already state that the descendants of the guilty officials cannot hold official positions. These descendants of the guilty officials are mixed among the ranks of generals and schools, which has damaged the atmosphere of the garrison and made its soldiers so unbearable to fight. Upon hearing the 3 consecutive strikes of the bronze tablet, Lv Fong knew that Emperor Jiajing was interested in this memorial and immediately continued, saying, Nowadays, the Southeast Japanese rebellion has not been quelled for a long time, and there are also reasons why these guards are guilty of supporting bandits. Nye Shangshu believed that the court should send envoys to investigate the descendants of the guilty officials in various regions, remove their official positions, recover the court's rewards and excessive salaries over the years, use this money as military pay, and then simplify the selection of military talents as military academies. Without the court sharing the money and food, the Southeast Japanese rebellion will be resolved on its own. Lv Fong carefully looked at the face of Emperor Jiajing on the futon, only to see the solemn face of this loyal and filial emperor, without any sense of joy or evil. LV Fong once again lamented the unpredictable power of heaven, only to hear Jiajing suddenly speak up and ask. What does the cabinet think? LV Fong immediately flipped through the memorial and glanced at the cabinet's approval, saying. Yen Golao agrees, Su Golao opposes, and Li Golao does not comment. Jiajing smiled and said, Are you surprised that these two cabinet elders have changed their positions? LV Fong quickly lowered his head. As the eunuch of the Imperial Household Department, Bingbai, the most taboo thing for him was to make friends with foreign ministers. Upon hearing the emperor's probing intention, LV Fong quickly said, How can I guess the thoughts of the old man? Jiajing suddenly raised his voice and said, They are ministers, and you are also ministers. In terms of loyalty, foreign ministers are not as good as your inner ministers. However, since ancient times, emperors have used foreign ministers, and you, these inner ministers, have not been used to govern the country. Do you know why, LV Fong? LV Fong quickly kowtowed and dared not answer. Jiajing said, It's because the foreign ministers can alleviate your father's worries. Su Jia and his gang of clear-flowing people, who spend their days shouting poverty with Southeast Japanese soldiers and discussing in vain, only this Nya Baoan knows how to share your father's worries. What I need is such capable officials who can do things. Let the Ministry of War draft a plan and submit it to the cabinet. LV Fong immediately understood the emperor's meaning. And the extra money, of course, is for the loyal and filial emperor to repair palaces and temples. LV Fong received the decree and withdrew from the Yushi Palace. Suddenly, a cold wind blew and raindrops poured down from the southeast direction. Watching the suddenly changing weather, LV Fong quickly instructed the eunuchs to take care of the windows and doors, and not let raindrops fall into the Yushi Palace. The sudden rain caught the interest of Emperor Jiajing, who only saw him holding a copper pestle and circling around the golden floor tiles. As he spun around, he recited a certain scripture from the Taoist scripture in his mouth. After reciting the scripture, Emperor Jiajing looked at the Qian hexagram under his feet and finally smiled. He pounded copper with a copper pestle while singing in a frenzy. The sky is dark and the earth is dark. The dragon is moving, and the dragon's energy is rising southeast. It is auspicious for Li Zhen. LV Fong knew that this was a good omen for Emperor Jiajing, but he dared not delay the main matter and hurriedly walked towards the cabinet with a memorial. At this moment, in the sea of southern Fujian, a lucky boat is undulating on the turbulent sea surface. A tall and upright young man was standing at the bow of the lucky boat, leaning on the mast and gazing at the distant waves. 100 households. The bow waves are big. The lucky boat was pushed into mid-air by a wave, and then crashed heavily into the sea, lifting a row of water pillars. These water columns landed on the deck, knocking down the young man's handkerchief that tied his hair. He only saw a fluttering long hair spreading out with the wind and waves. This young man dressed in 100 households turned out to be a young woman. The woman's long life at sea gave her a healthy wheat-colored skin, and her fake beard had been knocked off by the waves, revealing her delicate features. At this moment, the sailors on board the Fu ship were all kneeling on the deck, praying that the third Master Empress could bless them with a safe return to the port. Without the sun, moon, and stars, the lucky ship could not recognize its direction. At this time, the most challenging thing was the captain's judgment. Only by finding the correct direction and sailing back to the coastal port can one be saved in such bad weather. If it deviates from its course and enters the deep sea, this old lucky ship may not be able to hold out until the storm subsides. 100 households. Dragon King. The helmsman pointed to a black tornado not far away between the sea and the sky, and the seawater was swept into the air, connecting with the black rain clouds. The people on board saw such a terrifying scene and all put down their belongings and knelt on the deck. But this woman disguised as a man knows that this is not a dragon king. She once heard her father say about this terrible weather phenomenon, where a ship would shatter to pieces if it was caught in the wind. But it's too late to explain to the crew now. The crew is in a state of being helpless. This female 100 households know that they must first break the fear in the hearts of the crew in order to have a glimmer of hope. "Take out my spear," said the female servant to the helmsman beside her. The helmsman asked in horror, "100 households? What are you doing?" Baihu looked firmly at the distant faucet and said, "I want to slay the dragon." End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Breaking the Waves. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Breaking the Waves. Of course, Baihu didn't really want to slaughter dragons. She just came up with a way to escape when her life was in danger for a moment. The huge suction caused by the whirlpool is pulling the lucky boat towards the wind column, and once caught in it, it will definitely die. The whirlpool formed by the water rushing over the sea reminded this household of the throwing rope they used to play with when they were young. Nowadays, the lucky boat is like the stones on the throwing rope, and the attraction of the water hose is like the rope connecting the stones. Baihu said to the helmsman beside him, "Let go of the sails." The helmsman looked at the 100 households in terror. At this moment, setting down the sail does not mean giving up resistance. But when they saw the young faces of Baihu, they all said that their son was Xiaomu, their daughter was Xiaofu, and the helmsman seemed to have seen the appearance of the old Baihu. The old helmsman sighed and cursed profusely, ordering the deputy helmsman to shout, "You kids! Get me up! Put down the sail!" The old helmsman was the most experienced sailor on the ship, and after he started cursing, the crew finally started moving. Baihu stared fixedly at the constantly moving water hose, and she personally held the rudder of the ship, slightly adjusting the direction of navigation. Along the whirlpool of the waves, this 200-ton lucky boat is like a flat boat, spinning around the water hose. Under the power of nature, humanity appears so insignificant. The waterspout is getting closer and closer, and the crew can all see the broken wood caught in it. It should be some unlucky ship caught in it. At the thought that this was their future destiny, some weak-willed sailors cried, and the helmsman looked at Baihu at the helm. Under such a violent storm, the heat released from her body collided with the sea water and rain. The way he steered in the storm, as if the old Baihu, who was like the sea god Needle, had returned. The old helmsman was dazed for a while. Steering was a physical task, let alone maintaining direction in such storms. Indeed, Baihu was born with divine power. Just as the lucky boat circled around the vortex, Baihu, who had been observing the direction, suddenly shouted, "The dragon is beheading." I only saw her release the rudder, pick up the red tassel gun inserted on the deck, and throw it forcefully towards the water tornado. "Sail up." Everyone watched as a touch of red swept across the night sky. The auxiliary helmets, who had been frightened by the water rushing, seemed to have been awakened by the shot from Baihu, and they all followed her instructions to raise their sails. Sailing on the wind, the entire lucky boat was thrown out like a slingshot by the water hose. The 200 material lucky boat broke through layers of wind and waves, just like flying on the sea, and quickly sailed away from the sea affected by the water tornado. The tremendous acceleration caused by centrifugal force gives people a strong sense of weightlessness. The old helmsman felt like he was about to faint, and the ship finally slowed down. The wind and waves gradually subsided, and although there was still scattered light rain in the sky, everyone on board knew they were safe. The old helmsman looked at her 100 households with admiration, only to see her beautiful face without any smug expression, only the fear of surviving the disaster. The old helmsman's nose was sore. If it weren't for the accident that happened to Lao Baihu, Mo Jun wouldn't have had to work hard at sea. But for the sake of Changning Guard, Ma Jun still disguised herself as a man and put on military uniform. The old helmsman walked up to the ship's rudder and whispered, "Baihu, give the order. Everyone is waiting for you to take us home." Baihu raised his head and looked at the respectful and hopeful gaze of the ship, ordering, "Full sail. Let's go home." In the temple of Changningwai, the rain is no longer as heavy as before, and sparse raindrops fall from the eaves. Susie was still tied to the pillar, but Aunt Gio released some restraints so that he could sit on the ground against the pillar. The rainstorm made the villagers stop shouting at Suze, but his crisis was not over. Little Radish sat restlessly beside Suze and kept asking, "When will my brother be able to return?" Suzy couldn't bear his noisy inquiries like a repeater and could only talk to him. "Your brother is one of the 100 households in Weili." "Yeah. My brother is amazing. He can carry buckets and is the most powerful person in our Changning Guard," said Little Radish with his head crossed over his waist. "Is it capable of carrying the tripod?" Ding. What is a ding? Suze could not roast. Anti-bucket, did your brother go to the sea to patrol against Japanese pirates? The 33rd year of the Jiajing reign was the most severe period of the Japanese pirates' rebellion, and the entire southeastern coastal area was unstable. Suze is a graduate student majoring in Ming history, and he remembers the records in historical books. On the 33rd day of the Jiajing reign, on the 27th day of the first lunar month, the Japanese pirates broke through the siege of Taicang and Nansha, and plundered Suzhou and Songjiang counties, occupying Nansha for 5 months. The Ming army besieged and could not break through the siege. On the 9th day of the second lunar month, the Japanese pirates invaded Songjiang prefecture again, but the Ming army attacked and could not resist. County Magistrate Liu Dongyang died in battle. Although it is only a brief account, the rampant Japanese pirates in the most prosperous Jiangnan region of the Ming Dynasty destroyed many people's homes and killed many in this catastrophe. Only when Suze was in this era did he feel the heavy weight of this historical record. Jiangnan was a land of great wealth for the Ming Dynasty. The Japanese invasion had already shaken the rule of the Ming Dynasty, and the corrupt machine of the Ming court finally began to operate, mobilizing the power of the whole country to quell the Japanese invasion. Minnan is also a place where Japanese pirates are rampant. Suze asked Little Radish Head about the situation in order to understand his own situation. "But I didn't expect this little carrot head to jump up and say, 'You Japanese pirate. Do you want to inquire about the news of the guard from me?'" When he started shouting, other people in the temple also looked at Suze. Suze quickly said, "I'm just chatting. It's okay if I don't talk." Little Radish snorted coldly and said, "Judging from your snake and mouse-like behavior, I know you're not a good person. My brother has been ordered by 1,000 households to pursue Mahu, but fortunately, the young master didn't say it out loud." After saying these words, Little Radish immediately covered his mouth. Aunt Chi sighed on the side and said, "Is it a thief's eyebrow and mouse face? If you inherit the position of Baihu in the future, what will our Changning Guard do?" Suzy held back his smile, and just as Little Radish was glaring at him angrily, suddenly a hungry and thin man rushed into the temple and said, "100 households. 100 households have returned." Little Radish crossed his waist and said, "Isn't Ben Baihu here?" "Wait, you're talking about me. Has my brother come back?" The little carrot head immediately rushed out of the room, and Aunt Gio leaned on her cane and shouted, "Hat! Wear a hat! Don't get cold in the rain." The few men guarding Suze were also eager to go to the beach to welcome the return of 100 households. Aunt Gio saw through their thoughts and waved her hand, saying, "You guys should go too." A few men looked at Suze, and Aunt Gio supported her cane and said, "This kid's hands are tied." Everyone bowed to Aunt Nine and then rushed towards the seaside. Suzy has confirmed that the 100 households who returned are the 7th generation ancestors recorded in the genealogy of the 7th uncle. Are these 100 households really daughters? However, it is reasonable to think about it. The officer positions in the Daming Guard are mostly hereditary, so Little Radish Head should be the younger brother of the current Baihu. However, there is an age requirement for inheriting military positions in the Daming military system. If Little Radish Head is the only son who cannot inherit military positions, then the military position will fall on the cousin of the collateral branch or even the distant clan. The Changning Guard is located in a remote area, and it is feared that the guard will let his sister take on the military position first, and then pass it on to little Radish Head when he reaches adulthood. Su Zhe sighed, indicating that the southeastern coastal defense was already riddled with holes. If the laws and regulations were sound in the early Ming Dynasty, it would be impossible for such a woman to inherit military positions on behalf of her younger brother. Su Zhe was also very interested in this seventh-generation ancestor who could fight against dragons. What exactly does this Ming Hua Mulan look like? End of this chapter. Chapter 6. The Golden Age. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. The Golden Age. When everyone left the temple, Entio narrowed her cloudy eyes and looked at Su Zhe, saying, "I know you're not a Japanese pirate." Su Zhe quickly lifted his head and looked at Aunt Jio's old face, saying, "I'm not really a Japanese pirate. Let me go." Aunt Jio sat down slowly and looked at Su Zhe, saying, "Although I don't know what method you used, if you are right, there will be a rainstorm today, and if you are right, the 100 households will return today, but I don't believe what kind of child you are under the Mazu seat. I have learned physiognomy before. You have a peculiar appearance. At first glance, you may only have a mediocre destiny, but you have hidden secrets. It's really strange." Su Zhe looked at the old temple Zhu in surprise. Couldn't it be that she really met? "Do you know you came through time travel?" Aunt Jio continued. "Where can you go without Changning Guard? Your origin is unknown." Su Zhe also had some toothache. The registered residence was strictly guarded during the Ming Dynasty. To leave your place of residence, you need to provide a certificate, and to report to the government when you arrive in a new place. Even merchants have a strict set of management measures. Without identification documents, one cannot enter the city, and even in the countryside, they will be taken to the government by the villagers. Now there are Japanese pirates again, and my short hair is so eye-catching that I'm afraid I'll be caught again as soon as I leave Changning Guard. Aunt Jio looked at Su Zhe and said, "I'll show you a clear path and settle down at our Changning Guard." Su Zhe was stunned for a moment, and the words of Aunt Jio seemed to be a good choice. Nowadays, the Ming Dynasty's garrison is exhausted, and even 100 households in the garrison can have women do it. It seems easy for oneself to establish an identity and live in the garrison. However, Su Zhe, who studied Ming history, knew that if he really became a member of the Imperial Guard, he would never be able to escape forever. According to the ancestral law established by Emperor Hongwu, once designated as a military household, generations of descendants must join the army. For example, once Su Zhe is designated as a military household, he will have to serve as a soldier in the army for his entire life. If Su Zhe dies in battle or is too old to fight, one of his descendants will be chosen to replace him. If Su Zhe had no descendants, then his descendants of the same clan would have to take on the responsibilities of military households. It was not easy to travel back to this era. The 33rd year of the Jiajing reign was 1554 AD, and by the year Li Zicheng invaded the capital in 1644, there were still nearly 100 years left for the Ming Dynasty. Although the golden finger in 100 scenes cannot help Su Zhe practice martial arts and immortality, life skills include skills such as reading, and in the game, players can also participate in the imperial examination to achieve fame. With this golden finger, as long as one obtains a normal identity, wouldn't it have a great future to become a jincher? If you become a soldier, wouldn't you never have a chance to turn over? Aunt Jio saw Su Zhe's confusion and said in a murky voice, "Judging from your speech, it seems like you are a scholar." Jio Auntie saw that Su Zhe did not answer and smiled, saying, "Our Changning Wei used to have a Wei school. If you want to study for the imperial examination, as long as the Wei school is re-established, you can participate in the examination through the Wei school." Health education. Su Zhe finally remembered that it was now the 33rd year of the Jiajing reign, which was already the mid to late period of the Ming Dynasty. In this era, the restrictions on military households imposed by the court were no longer as rigid as before. The Imperial Academy could run the Imperial Academy, and the children of the Imperial Academy could also register for the Imperial examination through the Imperial Academy. The most famous child of the Ming Dynasty, Zhang Jiajing and Zhang Shintong, was a military servant of the Jingzhou Guard in Hubei and Guangxi. He passed the Imperial examination and passed the high school entrance examination through the Wei School. Speaking of which, Zhang Jiajing should have just passed the Imperial examination a few years ago. This year, he left the court due to illness and returned to his hometown of Jiangling. Suzy's thinking couldn't help but diverge. In this era, Emperor Daojun sat high in the temple, and Yen Song and Su Jia were at odds. Gao Gong is still giving a lecture and feast at Prince Yu's mansion, while Zhang Jiajing is traveling in his hometown due to illness. Expanding the scale of time and space, the Xinshu founded by Qin Xianzhang and Wang Shouren is changing the academic landscape of the Ming Dynasty and has a profound impact on this land in the future. Martin Luther's religious reform is still ongoing, and enlightenment in Europe is already sprouting, which is about to affect the entire world for hundreds of years. The Ottoman Empire, the Habsburg dynasty, and the Kingdom of France are competing for power on the continent. The newly rising pirate power, English, competes with the old maritime giants Portugal and Spain for the crown of the sea. The Mayflower has not yet started construction, and the American continent is still a blank fertile land. What era is this? Isn't this the golden age that Suzy longed for before crossing over? This is not only an era of personal opportunities, but also a golden age for the entire country and nation. Suzy, who was originally steadfast in his materialist view of history, suddenly gained the upper hand with his heroic view of history. Does God bring himself to this era just to change it? Let the land of China, which will sink hundreds of years later, take the Chinese nation to the pinnacle of glory in this golden era where all ethnic groups in the world are thriving and striving to stand at the top of the world's nations. Young man, come to your senses. Aunt Jio's hoarse voice rang in her ears, finally pulling Suzy back to reality. Hey, we need to eat our food step by step, and walk our way step by step. Nowadays, I am an unidentified black man. Not to mention participating in the imperial examination, it would be good not to have my head chopped off as a leader of the Japanese pirates. Suzy calmed down and looked into Aunt Jio's eyes, saying, "Why me? Aren't you afraid that I'm really a masterpiece of Japanese pirates?" Aunt Jio looked into Suzy's eyes and said, "I believe in my own judgment of people." Aunt Jio stood up with a cane, lit 3 inferior sandalwood sticks, inserted them into the incense burner of Empress Sanshi, and then paid her respects devoutly. Changning Wei has been in decline since the time of the old 100 households. Not only has the Wei school been abandoned, but now this family temple is also going to be taken over by no one. I am already old, Changning Guard cannot live without temple blessings. Suzy is a researcher of Ming history, and naturally knows that for a palace, temple blessings are a very important position. Regardless of the era or region, going out to sea is a highly risky thing, and seeking a living at sea requires faith. Luck itself is an elusive thing, and every voyage is a struggle. Without faith, ordinary people are prone to collapse. The ancestral temple of Changning Wei is the embodiment of the faith of this Wei institution. Whether it's praying or fortune-telling, they are essentially aimed at calming people's hearts and giving desperate sailors the confidence to return home in the storm at sea. This is also the reason why Aunt Jio has such a high status in Changning Wei. Do you want an outsider from Changning Wei to come and serve as a temple blessing? Aunt Jio sighed and said, "I didn't originally want it. My disciple died at sea with the old 100 households. I'm afraid my body may not have a long fate. Since you know how to interpret divination, it shouldn't be difficult to make a temple wish." Aunt Jio looked at Suzy and said, "I know you're not something from the pool. During this time, I will do my best to bring out an apprentice. If anything unexpected happens to me, you just need to temporarily represent my apprentice to inherit the temple. How about that?" Suzy looked at Aunt Jio's murky eyes and finally nodded, saying, "It's a deal." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Military Registration. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Military Registration. Su Zhe looked at Aunt Jiao and couldn't help but ask, "Wait a minute, everyone knows I am a child under the Mazu throne. How can I be a temple goddess in these three abysses temples?" Aunt Jiao smiled slightly and said, "Mazu is not a lewd deity, and some people in Changningwai believe in it. Before going out to sea, asking the temple to pray for blessings is just for peace of mind. As long as it works, no one cares whether it is the blessing of the third master's empress or the blessing of Mazu's empress." Aunt Jiao untied the rope that bound Su Zhe's hands and looked at him, saying, "If you want to worship Mazu empress, it's not impossible to have a statue of Mazu empress in the side hall." Su Zhe was somewhat speechless, and indeed his attitude towards faith was very Chinese. However, Aunt Jiao's attitude further confirms the conclusion of Su Zhe's research on historical materials that in these guard houses along the southeast coast, family temples are very important clan facilities, not just simple temples. From the emaciated and yellow-faced people of the garrison to this dilapidated temple, one can see the decline of the Changning garrison. No wonder Aunt Jiao wants someone of unknown origin to serve as the temple goddess, as there is no one else to use in the entire Changning Guard. Aunt Jiao said, "The old 100 families died at sea, and many registered residents just came out. The head of the Japanese Preparation Bureau has not yet come down to join the army. As long as you have the registered residence registration of a family, you can become a citizen in the garrison." Su Zhe immediately understood what Aunt Jiao meant. After the severe Southeast Sea disaster, Emperor Jiajing established the general headquarters of the Japanese army in southeast China, specifically responsible for anti-Japanese affairs in various regions. At present, the higher authorities have not yet had the opportunity to supplement their military status in Changning Guard, which gives Su Zhe the opportunity to naturalize. As long as he disguises himself as the son of a certain family before being sent off from the headquarters in preparation for war, he can obtain a clear identity. As a history graduate student, Su Zhe naturally knows the importance of registered residence, which is the sincerity of Aunt Jiao. Aunt Jiao continued. This time, the main soldiers suffered heavy losses, and all the families with regular military status in the guard had to supplement their soldiers. If you became a member of the guard, you would definitely be pulled to the guard. I think you don't want to, do you? Suzy nodded repeatedly, saying that the Ming Dynasty allowed military households to participate in the imperial examination, but not soldiers. Simply put, as long as someone joins the military at home, the household will be classified as a military member, and all registered male soldiers in the military will be reserve soldiers. The military registration system established by Emperor Hongwu was aimed at ensuring the integrity of the military. But not all men in the military are soldiers. For example, Zhang Jiajing's family has military status, but someone from Zhang Jiajing's family is serving in the garrison and has fulfilled the obligations required for military status. So Zhang Jiajing was able to participate in the imperial examination through the Weishue, and along the way, he passed the imperial examination and was admitted to the Hanlin Academy. But this premise is that Zhang Jiajing is not a soldier of the Imperial Guard, and if he is recruited into the army, he naturally cannot participate in the imperial examination. Su Zhe naturally did not want to spend his entire life as a soldier at the Daming Guard. Although the soldiers also had channels for promotion to military officials, the Ming Dynasty still valued literature over martial arts. After the Battle of Tumu Castle, the status of military officials sharply declined. Su Zhe had a system in place and naturally wanted to participate in the imperial examination. The 9th aunt said, "My registered residence is pasted with the military register. This time, it's definitely not my turn to recruit soldiers. My nephew died in battle. Would you like to join my registered residence?" Su Zhe's eyes lit up. It seemed that this 9th aunt was sincere in wanting mutual benefit with her and did not dig any traps to harm her. The system of the Daming Guard has also developed for 100 years, and the military households in the Changning Guard are also divided into two types of military status. Legitimate military status refers to military households where there are immediate family members who serve in the military. If a regular soldier is unable to serve, they must be sent out to serve in the military. The military registration of the 9th Ants family is the in-laws and collateral branches of the military family, which is a kind of registered residence registration between the military registration and the agricultural registration. Only when all the male members of the regular military households connected to Aunt Jio's house have died, will they be added as regular soldiers from the military registration list, that is, as alternate soldiers. Su Zhe immediately bowed to Aunt Jio and said, "Auntie." The 9th aunt helped Su Zhe up and said, "The old lady's maiden name is Lin. Now there is only one nephew in her family register. You have taken his registered residence and will call him my nephew in the future." Su Zhe quickly nodded, and Aunt Jio said, "If you get married and start a business in the future, and still remember the old lady's feelings, how about having your descendants offer incense to the Lin family when they worship their ancestors?" Since ancient times, China has always attached great importance to the incense and fire worship of its ancestors. Su Zhe quickly said, "Don't worry, Auntie. I will not forget the incense and fire love of the Lin family." Aunt Jio smiled and said, "That's settled then. There is a wing room next to the temple, which was where my nephew used to live. The old lady has already cleaned it up, so you can move in directly. How about you just watch by my side these days and learn the craftsmanship of the temple?" Su Zhe quickly nodded and agreed, and Aunt Jio said with satisfaction, "I will tell Baihu about your identity. You stay in the temple for a while, and after a few days when the guards settle down, I will take you to pay respects to Baihu." So Su Zhe settled down in the ancestral temple of Changningwei. Although Su Zhe was curious about the Daming Mulan, who disguised herself as a man in the Changningwei genealogy, he had just arrived and did not want to be treated as a Japanese pirate spy by the villagers of the Wei. Therefore, he has been living honestly in his temple for the past few days. It took only 2 days for Aunt Jio to complete Su Zhe's registered residence. Now he has replaced her nephew who died in the war, and finally has a formal identity in Daming. Another day later, Aunt Jio brought back a smaller radish head. The child was thin and small, with withered and yellow hair, indicating malnutrition from a young age. Looking at the child being even shorter than the previous little radish, Su Zhe couldn't help but ask, "Auntie, is this the disciple you found?" Su Zhe is a physical traveler who grew up in the era of economic takeoff. Although his family background is average, he was also well nourished when he was young. He is 1.8 meters tall and stands out among the rest of the guards. Little Radish Head saw Su Zhe and was so scared that he hid behind Aunt Jio. Aunt Jio pulled her and said, don't be afraid, this is my nephew, and also your elder brother." Little Radish Head just stood out from behind Aunt Nine and curiously looked up and down at Su Zhe. Aunt Jio said, "Sainyang, you will live here in the future and learn the skills of the temple with me." "Sainyang. Is this little carrot head a girl?" Suzy looked carefully and realized that Sainyang was still quite delicate. The reason why she didn't recognize her was because her braided hair was like a little carrot head, which made Suzy mistakenly think she was a boy. Looking at the hairstyle of Little Radish Head, Su Zhe couldn't help but ask, "Auntie, this child hasn't reached her hairpin yet, has she?" Aunt Jio sighed and said, "This child is already 15 years old. She has no mother since she was young, and her father died in battle with Lao Baihu. No one has given her a funeral. Sainyang, please stay with me in the back room and do morning classes with me tomorrow." Little Radish nodded obediently, and Su Zhe looked at this skinny girl, feeling once again that the people of the Ming Dynasty were really difficult. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Attribute points. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Attribute points. In the morning, Aunt Jio sat on a cattail, flipping through a yellowed ancient book, and said to Su Zhe and Lin Xinyang, who had just started learning. Our temple, although not designated as a formal ritual by the imperial court, is also a family temple that has been inscribed on the official records of the political commissioners and monks, and has been passed down. My family temple, Zhu, is also registered in the county government and has 3 acres of duty-free temple land. Upon hearing that there were 3 acres of duty-free temple fields, little radish head Lin Xinyang smiled with surprise. Su Zhe sighed. He used to listen to his mentor talk about the hardships of the military households in the Ming Dynasty, but at that time he didn't take it seriously. Now that he has traveled through this era, Su Zhe finally realizes the hardships of the military households. Firstly, the land tax for farmers and military households is not consistent. The statutory land tax for farmers in the Ming Dynasty was not actually high. Emperor Hongwu, Zhu Yuanzhang, determined the number of acres in the country and set a total number of acres. He then believed that the money was enough for the court to use and ordered his descendants to never pay taxes, which means never to increase land tax. On average, 1 acre of official land earns 0.053 stones, and 1 acre of civilian land earns 0.0335 stones. Compared to the grain production of the Ming Dynasty, the tax rate is indeed not high. However, this land tax is a tax levied on farmers, and military farming is not included in this category. Although the nominal land tax is very low, in reality, farmers in the Ming Dynasty also have various miscellaneous donations and labor in addition to taxes. We have received the grain, and it requires manpower to deliver it to the county government. The county government also needs manpower to deliver it to the prefectural government, and the prefectural government also needs manpower to deliver it to the capital. The Yamen Gate requires manpower to lift sedan chairs and repair water channels, and farmers spend a lot of time on these labor tasks every year. If they are assigned to repair rivers or similar tasks, they may not be able to return home for several years. In addition to various forms of corvée, the land consolidation was severe in the mid to late Ming Dynasty, and a large number of people went bankrupt. The landlord's land rent was quite high, sometimes reaching 60% or even 70% of the output per mu. Therefore, by the end of the Ming Dynasty, Li Zicheng raised his arms and shouted, causing the collapse of the Ming Dynasty. The burden on farmers gradually increased from the early Ming Dynasty to the end of the Ming Dynasty, but the lives of military households were very miserable from the beginning. According to Emperor Hongwu's design, military garrisons like Changning Guard would allocate some land for cultivation, and the soldiers and family members of the garrison could cultivate the land for the needs of the garrison when there was no war. So Zhu Yuanzhang proudly said, "I raise 1,000,000 soldiers without spending a single penny on the people." The area of Changningwai is remote, and the terrain of southern Fujian is mountainous. Therefore, the ancestors of Changningwai could only dig terraced fields on the mountains, and the output of the land reclamation was supplied to the garrison, without the need to pay taxes to the local government. But with the growth of the population in Changningwai, these grains are also becoming increasingly insufficient to eat. Before Lin Xinyang's father died in battle, her family also had 3 acres of land to cultivate, but 60% of the cultivated grain had to be handed over to the Weisuali. So when the girl heard that there were 3 acres of duty-free land in the family temple that did not need to be taxed, she showed such a surprised expression. Aunt Jiao showed a satisfied smile, first mobilizing Xinyang's enthusiasm. She would seriously study the craftsmanship of Temple Zhu, and then she could confidently hand over the temple to her. However, Xinyang is still young and cannot afford to hold the stage, so Su Zhe will have to take on the responsibility for a few years first. Aunt Jiao continued. Speaking of the origin of this temple, the ancestors of our Lin family were in the 9th year of the Hongwu reign. The court used the stack collection method to draw the temple from our hometown Chuanzhou to Changning Guard. Now, up to 100 households, it has gone through 7 generations. After the succession of the 100 households by the second patriarch, the Empress Dowager Sanshi appeared as a saint in the dream of the second patriarch. The second patriarch wrote to the 1,000 households of Chuanzhou Prefecture and obtained the statue of the Empress Dowager Sanshi from the Chuanzhou Guard. From then on, the Changning Guard had a temple. Our family temple is the Zisan Temple, and after my passing, the clan will designate a new temple to celebrate. Aunt Jiao looked at Su Zhe, who listened attentively. At this moment, lines of prompts popped up in his mind. Attend morning classes, religious knowledge +1, LV1, 1/100, the property panel function has been unlocked. Do you want to view it without hesitation? Su Zhe chose to check, and a message that only Su Zhe could see appeared before him. Su Zhe, male, 25 years old. Intelligence. 7 power. 4 agility. 4 charm. 6 currently mastered skills. Rushing to the sea. LV1, 1/100 religious knowledge. LV1, 1/100 fortune telling. LV1, 1/100 prayer. LV1, 0/100 history. LV4, 0/400 Su Zhe was a little delighted that the attribute point function of 100 scenes had also been brought over. And even my own knowledge of history has become a skill. Also rated as LV4. In the garbage mobile game 100 scenes, character attributes are also a big liver point. Intelligence, strength, agility, and charm are collectively referred to as 4-dimensional attributes, and the higher the attribute, the stronger it naturally becomes. 5 points is equivalent to the average level of an ordinary adult, 10 points is the level of an average genius, 15 points is the level of a slightly famous genius, and 20 points is the level of a historically famous genius. At present, Su Zhe's intelligence and charm surpass those of ordinary people, while his strength and agility are also lower than those of ordinary adults. Of course, this ordinary adult refers to adults in modern society, such as Changning Wei, who are yellow-faced and thin-skinned. It is estimated that most people are not as strong and agile as Su Zhe. To Su Zhe's surprise, these attributes can be improved. In the 100 scenery map, simply liver a skill to LV5, LV10, LV15, LV20 to obtain a free attribute point that can be added to the 4-dimensional attribute. At the same time, when each skill reaches LV5, LV10, LV15, and LV20, a passive skill can be immediately drawn. This game-breaking liver point loop is what makes Su Zhe, this iron rooster, addicted to the game and uses liver to replace Krypton every day. If attribute points and passive skills are also in this broken system, then the system is quite powerful. Su Zhe is rubbing his hands and preparing to take a skill to LV5. Looking at your own skills, history has now reached LV4. As long as you find the method for liver history skill points, you will soon have a skill that reaches LV5. The future is promising. After finishing talking about the origin of the family temple, Aunt Jiao opened the yellowed old book and said, "Our Changningwei family temple enshrines the Empress Dowager Sanshi, and our ancestral temple is the Sanshi Tai Palace in Chuanzhou. However, from the perspective of the Dao lineage, we are inheriting the Lushan Dharma lineage, and the third master is also a revered deity under the Lushan Dharma lineage. Therefore, although our temple is small, it is still inherited in an orderly manner. Attend morning classes, religious knowledge +1, LV1, 2 out of 100, is it rising again?" Su Zhe is a bit excited. Sitting and listening to morning classes can increase experience points, and the skill of religious knowledge is also too easy to digest. However, Su Zhe quickly understood that each time he needed to hear new content in order to gain experience, he was afraid that this skill would be even more difficult to master later on than fortune-telling and the like. The Lushan sect is a popular Taoist lineage in the entire southern region, and it is surprising that Changning Wei, a small family temple, still has such a legacy. The founder of the Lushan sect is Su Shuzhen, but our Lushan lineage does not need to worship the founder like Longhu Mountain. You just need to know this. Attend morning classes, religious knowledge +1, LV1, 3 out of 100, Suzy saw that his skill points had increased again and listened more attentively. He didn't have much research on Ming Dynasty religion, but at this time LV4's historical skills came into play, and Suzy couldn't help but ask. Is Su Shuzhen the Taoist real person who killed the Poyang Lake Dragon in the Jin Dynasty? Aunt Jiao looked at Suzy unexpectedly and nodded, saying, it's that Su Zhenjuan. No wonder the southeastern coastal areas generally believe in the Lushan Dharma. Perhaps it is also because this Su Shuzhen can kill dragons that he is considered to have the ability to subdue sea storms. History +1, LV4, 1/400, end of this chapter. Chapter 9. Cold Vegetable Congee. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Cold Vegetable Congee. Suzy looked at the prompt. Has history increased? Can history still have such rich experience? Expanding knowledge can increase the experience value of history. Isn't it easy to reach LV5? As soon as Suzy thought of this, he also thought of his Changning Wei family tree hidden in the cracks of the beach cliff. Yes, can studying the genealogy of Changning Wei by oneself also enhance the experience value of history? Suzy squinted his eyes and pondered when he would go to the beach to retrieve the genealogy. Aunt Jiao talked about her morning class for a while, and when she saw that little radish-head Lin Xinyang was already lost in the sky, she let out a deep sigh. There are not many young people in the Weisuo who have become successful. Although Lin Xinyang is a hardworking child, she doesn't have much talent. Compared to Suzy, a stranger, he is actually the best candidate to do temple blessings. Aunt Jiao sighed again. Suzy's origin is unknown, and he is a seed of a scholar. It is impossible for him to be willing to do temple blessings in this small family temple. Only by putting in more effort like this old bone, can Lin Xinyang be brought out quickly. Aunt Jiao said, I'll be here in the morning class today. I made congee for cold dishes. Go and have congee. Hearing the cold dish congee, Lin Xinyang's sleepy face immediately perked up. She quickly got up from the futon and looked at the kitchen. Suzy helped Aunt Jiao up, and little radish head finally realized it. He also helped Aunt Jiao and walked towards the kitchen in the back room. Originally, there was no separate cafeteria in the family temple. Since Suzy and little radish head arrived, Aunt Jiao instructed Suzy to move out a dilapidated bedboard and place it next to the kitchen, becoming a place for the three to eat. The fragrance of rice mixed with the vegetable fragrance of vegetable leaves emerged from the large pot in the kitchen, and Lin Xinyang's saliva was about to flow down. Aunt Jiao doted on her little carrot head and touched its braid, then lifted the lid of the pot. The hot and fragrant aroma filled the entire kitchen. It is still February now. Even in southern Fujian, the weather is a little cold. There is not much rice in this pot of porridge, and a few pieces of green vegetable leaves are floating around. Aunt Jiao served congee to the three people. Little Turnip was just growing up and was hungry. She couldn't wait to drink the hot congee. Suzy looked at a few grains of rice and vegetable leaves floating in the congee. The life of the ancient people was too hard. A few days ago, when he drank this cold dish congee, Suzy still felt a bit rustic. But Suzy drank this congee all the time. When he saw the vegetable leaves, he wanted to vomit. Every day, his stomach growled with hunger before noon. But the temple only eats 2 meals a day. One meal is after school in the morning, and the other meal is before sunset. Suzy cleans the temple every day hungry. Even if the cold dish congee is hard to swallow, he will endure to drink it. Looking at the little turnip, Suzy knew that Lin Xinyang could not drink this cold dish congee before she was accepted as a disciple by the 9th aunt. No wonder everyone in the bathroom was pale and thin. Suzy took up the bowl and cooked the congee with cold vegetables. It was very thick, like a thick sauce. It tasted like snot. Suzy once read ancient recipes in university and knew that this cold vegetable was also known as winter amaranth, which is an ancient vegetable. In the Book of Songs, cook sunflowers and beans in July refers to this type of vegetable. Because winter vegetables are cold resistant and can grow in winter, they have always been widely cultivated as winter vegetables by the people before the cruciferous cabbage occupied the dining table. However, when cold vegetables are cut, they will exude mucus. They are very thick when cooked together with congee. In ancient times, when there was a lack of edible oil, this congee was very easy to swallow and felt full. It has always been loved by the poor. The 3-acre temple field behind Jiao Po's temple, half of which is planted with this winter cold vegetable. However, this type of cold dish has a faint bitter taste and tastes sticky. It was replaced by cabbage after the Ming and Qing dynasties and gradually withdrew from the Chinese dining table. Now Su Zhe can't help being picky. He quickly finishes the cold dish congee in the bowl and says to Aunt 9. Auntie, I want to go to the beach for a walk. Can you find some seafood? These days, Su Zhe has been honestly hiding in the family temple, and gradually the rumors and gossip about him in the Changning Guard have decreased. Baihu returned from the sea, and now the entire Changning Guard is praising Baihu's assassination of the Dragon King, with less attention paid to Su Zhe. In addition, with the prestige of Aunt Jiao in the garrison, the residents of the garrison finally stopped treating Su Zhe as a Japanese pirate. So Su Zhe is going to the beach for a stroll, to see if his sea-driving skill can catch some shrimp, crab shells to improve his diet, and to find an opportunity to retrieve the family tree and sweet potatoes hidden in the crevices of the cliff. Besides the genealogy, the potatoes and sweet potatoes sent by Uncle Seven before crossing the border are divine treasures here. After eating several cold food congee, Su Zhe missed sweet potato congee and baked potatoes. Although sweet potatoes had already been introduced to the southeast region during this period, these two crops were widely cultivated in China by the mid-Qing dynasty. The sweet potato varieties introduced to China today are all original varieties from South America and require a relatively warm environment. In the middle of the Ming Dynasty, there was a small ice age in history, and the temperature throughout the country was not high. Even in areas like southern Fujian, it could reach 0 degrees in winter. So the sweet potatoes that could have matured a few times a year in South America can only be ripened twice a year or once a year in China. Although the yield is high, the taste is not good, and not many people planted them during this period. By the middle of the Qing dynasty, after several generations of cultivation, cold-resistant varieties of sweet potatoes were screened out, and their taste gradually became delicious. Sweet potatoes were then widely promoted nationwide by the Qing court. Potatoes were only introduced to the southeastern coast of China during the Wanli period and are now only partially cultivated in Southeast Asia. Suzy brought over sweet potatoes and potatoes, both of which are excellent varieties cultivated through modern agriculture. They are not only cold and drought resistant, but also have a good taste and high yield. They are much better than the original South American varieties of this era. At the thought of this, Su Zhe became even more restless. After eating the cold food congee, he said to Aunt 9. Auntie, I want to go to the beach and see if I can find some seafood to bring back. Jiao Auntie looked at Su Zhe. Before the last time Lao Baihu went to sea, her nephew would also go to the beach to catch some seafood and improve his food when he had nothing to do. Now that his nephew has died in battle with Lao Baihu, Su Zhe's image overlaps with his nephew's image. Aunt Jiao's expression darkened as she waved her hand and said. Coincidentally, no one has come to tell fortune these days. You go ahead. Little Turnip Head has eaten cold vegetables and congee these days, but Lin Xinyang is also a teenager, and can't stand loneliness. Seeing that Su Zhe is going to the seaside, she looks at Aunt 9 and Su Zhe expectantly. Aunt Jiao waved her hand and said, Go ahead, the waves are merciless. You should listen to your elder brother and not get too close to the sea. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Chasing the Sea. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Chasing the Sea. Although Su Zhe was somewhat reluctant, seeing the hopeful expression on Little Radish's face, he still nodded and took Lin Xinyang with him. Xinyang happily carried a bamboo basket and followed Su Zhe towards the beach. Just as Su Zhe walked out of the temple, he heard a childish voice shouting. "General is here." I only saw a little carrot head with a tiger head and tiger brain riding a bamboo horse, wearing a bamboo basket pretending to be a helmet, shouting and shouting on the street. Su Zhe saw that it was indeed the younger brother of the current 100 households who had come again. Su Zhe learned about the situation of the Weisuo from Aunt Jiao. Most of the people in Changning Wei are surnamed Lin, and the current Baihu name is Lin Majuan. This little carrot head is the only younger brother of Baihu, Lin Liangjun. Little Radish rode a bamboo horse to Su Zhe and pretended to be an adult, saying, "Why don't you bow down when you see this general?" Su Zhe also accompanied him in the play and smiled slightly, saying, "See the general." Seeing Su Zhe's cooperation, Little Radish Head said with great joy. "Great! I have appointed you as the vanguard under my command, and we will collude to kill the Japanese pirates." Su Zhe didn't know from whom this guy learned his idiom. Rubbing his jumping temples, he said, "General, colluding with others is a derogatory term." "What is a derogatory term?" Su Zhe gave up the idea of correcting the idiom Little Radish Head. Little Radish Head saw the Little Radish Head hiding behind Su Zhe, and he became even more interested and said, "Who are you? Why don't you bow down when you see this general?" Lin Xinyang was so scared that she was about to cry, and Su Zhe quickly said, "This is Xinyang, the disciple my aunt just accepted." 9 Auntie's disciple. "Wait a minute, aren't you going to be 1 generation older than this general?" Little Radish said discontentedly, "No, I won't be able to become 100 households in the future. I won't call you auntie." Little Radish's head became addicted to the play and saw the basket in Lin Xinyang's hand. His eyes turned and he asked, "Where are you going?" Su Zhe said, "We're going to the beach to catch the sea." Rushing to the sea. Little Radish's eyes lit up and he immediately said, "Let's go, let's go. Our general is also going to drive the sea, so hurry up." Su Zhe felt a bit helpless. Originally planning to go to the beach alone to find an opportunity to retrieve the family tree and potatoes, but now he has turned into carrying 2 oil bottles to the sea. "Forget it, let's go first and then take it when we have a chance." Carrying 2 carrot heads, Su Zhe arrived at the beach. When he saw the crowds of people on the beach, he realized that he was not the only one who wanted to improve his food by rushing to the sea. So many people. Lin Liangjun, the little carrot head, said confidently, "A few days ago, there was a storm and tide, but it brought a lot of good things from the sea. If it weren't for my sister and my brother banning my feet, my general would have been able to reward you with eating big crabs." Su Zhe said in confusion, "Why did 100 households ban you?" Lin Liangjun grinned and said, "Last time you said my brother was capable of carrying a cauldron. I asked him to carry a cauldron for me to see, but he actually wanted to beat me with rattan sticks. When this general inherits 100 households, he will definitely have to carry a cauldron for me to see every day." Su Zhe. The beach of Changningwei is not a beach, but a mudflat full of mud. Stepping on the mud, the cold seawater brought a piercing feeling, and Lin Xinyang trembled. Su Zhe arranged her to sit down on a big stone facing the sun, and took Lin Liangjun, who was not afraid of the cold, to search the mudflat for seafood. With so many people on the beach, all the clams left on the ground were picked up. Su Zhe began to search for the creatures in the mudflat according to LV.1 level C driving skills in his brain. Su Zhe looked very carefully and soon saw the regular small round holes in the mud. He immediately stopped his steps. Little Radish Head Lin Liangjun excitedly followed behind Su Zhe, watching him stop on a flat muddy ground. "Why suddenly stop?" "I only saw Su Zhe pick up a bamboo stick and quickly insert it into the mud ground next to the round hole. With a forceful flick, he indeed discovered a hard object hidden in the mud. Su Zhe immediately used a bamboo stick to pry out the hard object, and Lin Liangjun saw a dark object jump out of the mud. Su Zhe washed the black mud in the nearby pond, and a slender shellfish like a finger appeared in front of Lin Liangjun. Bamboo clams. Little Radish Head immediately became excited. The bamboo clam tasted delicious, and Lin Liangjun's saliva was about to flow down. Su Zhe summoned Lin Xinyang, put the bamboo clams in the bamboo basket, and continued to search on the beach with Lin Liangjun. Discovering bamboo clams, rushing to C+1, LV1, 2/100, before crossing the river, Su Zhe once followed his mentor on a vacation to the beach. At that time, his senior brothers and sisters in the same group were rushing to the beach with tools and had a lot of fun. But after crossing into this world, Su Zhe realized that driving the sea was a physical job. Bending over to search for seafood on the mudflats is an extremely physically and mentally demanding task. Su Zhe drank a little cold dish congee in the morning, and less than half an hour later, he was hungry. Little Radish Head Lin Liangjun lay on the stone early, basking in the sun with Little Radish Head. Su Zhe looked at less than 20 bamboo clams in the bamboo basket, and then looked at the 20/100 experience points of his drive the sea skill, and couldn't help but sigh. In my past life, I enjoyed watching videos of rushing to the sea, but I didn't expect it to be so tiring. Before noon, the people on the beach gradually dispersed, and Su Zhe couldn't help but ask. Why did everyone go back? Lin Liangjun smiled and said, tides always come at night. Now that we've almost picked up everything on the beach, why don't we go back? Su Zhe has also observed other villagers who drive to the sea. They usually only pick seashells and abalone from the beach, and sometimes turn over rocks to look for shrimp and crabs. However, few people dig bamboo clams like Su Zhe. Lin Liangjun said, who dug bamboo clams like you? This thing is easy to die from, and it can't be transported to the county to sell for money. There isn't much meat, and although the taste is good, it took too much effort to dig it, which is not cost-effective at all. Lin Xinyang also said, in the past, my dad only picked up things that rushed to the beach when he went to the sea. Brother, this actually resulted in a loss of stamina, and this little meat is not enough to replenish his strength. Su Zhe suddenly realized that modern people's pursuit of the sea is a yearning for the life of rural petty bourgeoisie, and can only be considered as an entertainment project for experiencing vacations. And now the people of Changning Guard are rushing to the sea to survive, so it's not cost-effective to consume too much physical energy. The planning of the garbage mobile game 100 Scenes is dead for the whole family. The game sets chasing the sea as the core skill for obtaining resources in the early stage, which is completely a petty bourgeois sentiment. I don't even understand the working people. Su Zhe cursed inwardly and temporarily gave up the impulse to improve his sea driving skills. He said to the two carrot heads, you two go back first, I'll take a look on the beach. After sending two radish heads back, the beach was almost deserted. Su Zhe identified the direction and arrived at the edge of the cliff where he was hiding things. Looking at the mud that had sealed the cave entrance at that time, which had already dried and was still intact, Su Zhe smiled. He cracked open the mud 3 times and pulled the snake skin bag out of the hole. Looking at the bags full of sweet potatoes and potatoes, Su Zhe's saliva was about to flow down. I can finally have a full meal. End of this chapter.